Hi guys, did you ever want to take pictures of food? You know, like the ones you see on the menu that look really nice and really professional, but you really had no idea where to turn or where to start? Well, in this video, I am going to be showing you exactly how to get started in food photography. It's actually much simpler than you think. Right after the intro. Hi guys, and welcome to Tech and Pics. This channel is about tech and it's about pics, but mostly it's about taking pics. And today we're taking pictures of food. So I was lucky enough to be in Vienna, Austria, and I actually was able to interview professional photographer Cliff Kapatais in his studio about food photography. Now he is a professional photographer and he takes pictures of pretty much food. He takes portraiture photography, and he also has a lot of great workshops which actually you can attend the next time you happen to be in Vienna, Austria. Of course, if you live in Vienna already, then problem solved. You can just go ahead and participate to his workshop. So any links in the description below, and make sure you check him out and show him some love. But guys, before we get on with the video, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you've not already done so. So if you are a subscriber, thank you for rejoining me in the video. And if you are new and want to see more videos like this, then consider subscribing. So I am now going to bring you into the interview and respond to every single question that you would have if you want to get into food photography. So I will see you after the interview.
Things. Good. So basically my first question would be, what are the most important things to keep in mind, especially for people that have no idea about food photography and would want to get into, they're not going to become a professional overnight, but just how, like, what they can start, like if someone's also like on a budget, like what are the main things that they can focus on when it comes to like starting in the field of food photography? Like,
well, the most important factors that make a big difference to how the end picture looks, how the result looks, is lighting for one, and it's not the quality of the light so much, but where to position it and how to work with it. So you always want to work with very soft light, and compared to normal pictures like portraits where you usually have the light coming from front, positioning the light behind or to the side of the food is actually the main trick in food photography. So you can actually see all the food properly and make it look delicious. If you just have the light up front directly onto it, it looks very bland and very boring and not very exciting at all. The other thing that makes a big difference is that you have to be fast. So you don't have time to put your food on the table and then start setting up the lights and to getting out your camera and putting on the lens and everything, as you do with anything else that you're taking pictures of. Food starts looking bad really quickly. So after half a minute, the salad will not look as good as it looked when you put it there. And it takes a lot of planning and practicing to get this done, but basically all your setup should be ready, and when you come with the food and put it on the table, or whenever your chef or your food stylist comes along with the food, they just need to put it down and you take a picture and you're done. So it shouldn't require any further work there. So setting up, planning, taking test shots is also a very good starting point if you don't know what, or if you don't do this daily and you don't have the routine that you need. And the other thing we talked about is the lenses. There's very many different lenses you can use for food photography. Obviously macro lenses allow you to get very close and very near, or other lenses, but they get very expensive very quickly. So a good starting lens for food photography, as with nearly every other photography, is the 50mm 1.8 lens, which is available for all camera brands. It's very cheap, it's very good quality for the price you get. And they usually have a close focus range of about, I think, 40 or 50 centimeters. So it actually allows you to get pretty close to your dish. And when you're shooting food, it's usually very small. So you have like a 20, 30 centimeter plate or point of interest that you wouldn't get on focus. That works really well with that lens. Plus, the 1.8 allows you also to play with depth of field a lot, so you can push the user's attention on the things you want to see.
So you mentioned the lens, for example. So basically, you would start taking the pictures at which f-stop. So this is mainly because a lot of people are thinking, well, I want that very much out of depth, the background blurry and everything like that, or the bokeh is what it's called, the technical term. So they want that really out of focus. So they say, well, I'm going to get a 1.4 or a 1.2, and they wind up spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars or euros, and then they say, well, my pictures don't look as good as those. So like, for example, so then at this point, a like if you have like a Canon camera, so like a EF mount, for example, then actually the $100 or €100, that's about what it costs, the 50mm 1.8 would actually be more than sufficient for something like this.
Perfect, yeah. I still use it in my daily business. It's a very good lens if you don't have to get in too close. So if you need to take a macro shot of a cherry for the new cherry juice something, you're most probably not going to be very happy with it because you can't get close enough to get it to fill the picture, to fill the frame. So in that case, you might need a macro picture. But anything that has the size of a table, where there's a setting, where there's a plate, where there's stuff happening, you can get that framed in really, really nicely, and it works really, really well. And you were talking about the depth of field. That's also one of the things you can actually calculate beforehand. Usually you know, okay, my plate is about this big and my steak is in the middle and I need these 10 centimeters to be sharp. And there's depth of field calculators on the internet or apps for the mobile phones where you can actually figure out, okay, I'm using this camera with this lens on it and this combination, and I'll be this far away from it, and tell you exactly which settings you'll need to use to get these 10 centimeters sharp that you're aiming for. Very, very rarely do you actually use an f-stop of 1.4 or 1.2, because usually we're very close to our food, which means you have a very, very narrow depth of field. Yeah. And if you've got chicken and there's only like 1 centimeter of it in focus, that doesn't look very good. So you want to have at least the 20 centimeters of your dish being sharp and being crisp and looking interesting. So actually, I suggest investing more into good light than spending hundreds of dollars on the lenses you actually can't use in the daily business.
Coming to now the part with the lighting that you mentioned. So for example, in my case, I don't actually own a flash, except for the one that's built into the camera. But what I do own is, for example, a LED light panel that you can mount to a tripod, or it has its own self-standing legs. You can mount to a table or something like that. It gets pretty bright enough, so if you get close enough, it's not as bright as a flash. But basically, you can use basically any source of light, as long as it's not harsh, and then you would need that. So for example, if you have people that do have a light panel but they don't have a flash, then they could use either or they can just use regular lights. I mean, is there any limitations when it comes to where the light actually comes from?
I keep saying it doesn't really matter what light you use as long as the picture looks good. If you're using a LED panel, or if you're using a flash, or if you're using candles, really doesn't matter as long as you know what you're doing and how you get the picture style to look the way you want it to do. So with food, what we're aiming to do is we try to have one large light source, a very soft light source. So if you have a LED panel, for instance, that's usually, or just one of the hot shoe flashes, they're very small and very hard light sources, and what you want to do is you make them bigger. So you can just use a diffusion sheet in between them, or stick an umbrella in between them to try and get the light to be softer and come from a bigger light source, which makes it way more pleasing on the food. And once you've got that figured out, there's really nothing stopping you from using your LED panel or anything else. The closer you get, the softer the light is, so you want to bring it in as close as possible to have a nice effect on the food. Also the quality, the warmth and the temperature of the light make a big difference. But it's all playing and practicing. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
And you mentioned, for example, by putting the light on the opposite side of where your camera is. So if you have something where you want to bring out like a certain area, so like a certain part of the surface, then you would have to put the light behind the surface you actually want to lead the person's eye on. But then, as we talked about before, then you would have area in the front which would be dark. And how would you then, unless you have a full frame camera which actually has very good dynamic range, so if you have an A7R3 which has amazing dynamic range, or a Nikon D850 for example that has outstanding dynamic range, then you could probably push the envelope a lot more, considering if you have like a micro four thirds camera where the dynamic range is not so good. So what could someone do actually if they put the light on the opposite side? What could they do on the side where they want to bring focus to actually bring not all the light, but some of the light? What could they actually use if they don't have like a reflector, for example? Is it like just homemade things or anything like that, if there's anything that they can use?
The only problem you have when you put the light in the back is that the front gets too dark. The shadows in front of the plate or in front of the dish are dark and not very pleasing. And so you want to make them lighter. So you use some sort of reflector, and that's either a professional reflector that you just buy, like there's reflectors for €20 on Amazon, Or you can use anything that will get light back to you. So a white sheet of A4 paper is fine. Stick that on a cardboard so you can stand it there or get somebody to hold it. You don't want to get rid of all the shadows, you just want to lighten them so that people can actually see what's there. And you can use more or less anything. You can use a second light source if you have a second LED panel. Turn that down low so you just start getting rid of the shadows and getting some textures in the picture. Or use a reflector of some sort. Cardboard, aluminum foil, stick it on it, put there, you've got perfect reflector. It doesn't look too professional if you go into a 5-star restaurant to take pictures of their food, but it does the trick just as good as any sunbounce or anything. Well, maybe not quite as good as a sunbounce, but it'll do the job if you're close enough.
So, for example, another thing which comes to mind is how well the colors work with each other, and what is basically one of the most important things someone should keep in mind when mixing colors together. Like, for example, they say I have white spaghetti on a white plate on a white table, for example. Like, what are some things they can keep in mind in order to make the colors work well with each other?
So basically what you're trying to do with colors or anything else in the picture is you could try to add contrasts to make it look more interesting and more eye-catching. And when you're working on colors, you always want to bring in complementary colors that boost each other. So classically, if your salads work really well because you've got the greens and you've got the reds, and if you've got some, yellow bell peppers, you've got really nice complementary contrasting colors pushing each other. Whereas if you have the yellow curry in the orange plate on the red table, colors that all look alike, it will look rather boring, or it will all look very bland. So what you do is you take the curry and put it in a blue bowl, and it'll look a lot more interesting. There's a color wheel, you can Google that, and it's basically just an arrangement of all the natural colors occurring, and what you want to use in your setup is colors that are most far apart in the picture. So you're not trying to use colors that are next to each other, like red, yellow, orange, things like that. But complementary colors like red, green, and blue would work very good.
Last question which I would have regarding this is the arrangement. So we have our food, we have our plate, but should we just keep it? Of course, there's people that want to keep it simple, like just everything white and keep it simple. And then there's other people who say, well, I want to create that warm feeling or like that rustic look or something like that. Like what would be important in terms of like arranging the whole scene around it? Or if there's like points to keep in mind, other ones that you should probably leave alone, or like what are the most important things?
Well, basically the most important thing is the customer has to be happy. So if that's you and you're doing your own blog and you want to have your own picture style, that's fine. If you've got a high-class sushi restaurant, it's all very minimal design and very clean. The pictures have to fit to that design. Whereas maybe, a burger joint that's very down to earth and wooden and shabby chic will require a lot of different settings and different styles in the whole thing. There's a couple of ways to go about this. One is make it your own style and say, this is my look, this is how I like my food to look, and then take pictures of all different dishes in the setup. Another one is to invent each dish new and say, I want my spaghetti to look very down to earth and Italian, and I want my sushi hyper clean and fancy, and I want my fruits to be very healthy out in nature. So it depends on how you want to go about it. The main thing is that it works together. On the other hand, sometimes if you take things and take them out of their natural position and take, a burger and put it in a car park on the cement, which is totally out of place where you'd want it, it creates a second where the viewer goes, hey, what's going on here in this picture? And will actually take time to look at your picture, which might be what you're aiming for. You want him to look at your picture, not all the others in the magazine or in the cookbook. So it really depends where you're aiming, where you're going with the pictures. Is it your project? Are you doing this for a customer who's got very special ideas about how the whole thing should look? Or are you just trying to create cool pictures or art or something? So there's no rules, or there should be very few rules. It just has to look great.
So, Cliff, thank you very much. And I really appreciate all the feedback in the interview. And hopefully people at home now can become professionals in taking pictures and also going towards taking more professional pictures of food.
Sure, that'd be great. Thanks for visiting, and I'm looking forward to seeing your pictures soon.
Thank you.
And of course, I would like to say a very big thank you to Cliff Kapatais again for taking the time out of his busy schedule for actually being interviewed by me. And it was really informative, and I learned so many things. And I actually took pictures with my own camera, and I learned the basics. And really, if somebody like me can get into food photography, then everyone like you can get into food photography. It is not that difficult. It takes practice for food preparation, but once you have the food prepared and you have your lighting set, whether it's an off-camera flash or a fixed light, you can easily get started in food photography. So guys, if you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. It really does make a difference. And really visit my social media links if you have any questions. Leave a comment below, leave a like on this video, and just share it on your social media because it actually helps this channel. There's a lot of people who want to take picture of food, but they just don't even know where to go because YouTube has videos, but not that many videos, and the videos that are there are not really as informative. They're always trying to cut corners because they want to keep the biggest secrets for themselves. So this video would actually be the best example. So guys, thank you for watching. I am Carl from Tech and Pics, and I will see you in the next video.